Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Daily MBA. Today, we're going to start a new set of episodes where I'm going to be talking about service design. And so this may sound a little bit ambiguous because, of course, we are living surrounded by services, and actually 2/3 of the US economy are made up of services, but we're not constantly thinking of how to design them consciously and how to put the user in the center of this design. So all of this series of episodes are going to be around service design. And for starting, I wanted to explain to you what is service design. According to the definition, service design is the intentional orchestration of experiences across various channels and touchpoints. It's concerned with the overall experience that takes place over time, ensuring that it will meet the desired outcome for the user. And so this is going to be a very long explanation, but I want you to understand is that it's an intentional orchestration of experiences. And so this means that it's not just going to be one touch point for the user, but you're going to be orchestrating a lot of different small things that are going to ultimately create a service that will meet the user's desired outcome. So designing in this context is going to be about devising the courses of action that are going to be aimed at changing this existing situation of the user into a preferred or an ideal one. And so service design, if we have to summarize it, will solve the right problem by carefully framing an opportunity for the user. And so it's kind of a doing, not talking discipline with a bias towards action and continuous iteration. Services have a common misconception that are intangible and therefore too complex to design. But truly, the only person who gets to decide what a service is going to be the user who wants to achieve it. And you can think about it in any example of your life. So let's say I'm trying to get an appointment for a dentist, and I am using their service online to get this appointment. I am the only one that can get to define what the service truly is, because I have a goal in my head, which is getting an appointment as fast and as easy as I can possibly do. But sometimes companies don't have this in mind, and they start designing services just by throwing things out there and adding more and more layers of complexity. So all of these things are going to be roles that we have to consider when we are designing services, because we have to orchestrate all of the pieces of the service into the most seamless journey possible. And this is very easy to say, but very hard to achieve. Because services most of the times are not created from scratch, and they are going to start evolving through very intentional choices. So our goal together is going to be turning this everyday, often, and sometimes unconscious decision into very conscious design decisions that have full awareness of their impact into a user. Now, if we start going into some important principles for designing a good service, we're going to have 5 principles. The first one is going to be easy to find. The name of the service, for example, is going to be key. It should reflect what users are trying to do, and therefore they're going to be able to find this service very easily. You should always try to avoid technical jargon, acronyms, or text-specific terms that are going to confuse the user and might also be pushing the service into something that's a bit more technical. Because users are usually going to come to a service with a pre-formed goal, and then your job is going to be guide them throughout the service without needing support or restoring to usual actions. So that's the first principle, be easy to find. Second principle, it's clearly explain its purpose. And so a user that has no prior knowledge should be able to understand what the service does and how it works from the very beginning. And this, again, sounds very easy to do, but most of the services aren't as intuitive on what they actually do and what outcome will the user achieve from using it. So avoid marketing promises. Over here, you have to avoid jargon and other extra things. You have to explain how the service works. And this, again, could be communicated even from the service name, the description, or just heuristic things like the subscribe button. That's going to be principle number 2. Now, principle number 3 is going to be set a user's expectations of the service. When we're thinking of users' expectations of the service, we have to consider that as companies, we almost always need things from the user. Either if that's data, that's money, that may be a lot of different things. But we're going to need something from the user, and in exchange, of course, they're going to want something back. So we have to know what can they expect from the service provider in return. And this can include timeframes, costs, contact information, or everything else. For better understanding this, there are basically 2 types of expectations that we can deal with. The first ones are going to be universal expectations. And these are the basic must-haves, we could call them, like a restaurant serving food. Of course, universally, everyone is expecting for a restaurant to serve food. And these ones, you don't have to explicitly state them, but ensure that they are met, because their absence is going to cause great dissatisfaction in any type of service. The second type of expectations are going to be assumed expectations. And those are going to be the expectations that users might have based on prior experiences with similar services. And here it's going to be a little bit harder, but it will require some market research for identifying them and then clearly explain them at the point that they become important to the user. So especially if you are deviating from standardized services. Avoid surprising users with unexpected complexity or requirements in the service journey, because you should try to distribute complexity evenly throughout the journey and ideally reducing it as much as you possibly can. So that's going to be principle number 3, set a user's expectations of the service. Now, principle number 4 is going to be enable each user to complete the outcome they set to do. So, we were saying that services have a specific goal, especially for every user. And what the service designer should do is focus on the purpose, because the service should help each user achieve their goal in a seamless stream of events from initial consideration to post-completion. And basically, you don't want users to think while they're using your service. It should be self-evident or self-explanatory. And ideally, it should work in a way that is familiar to each user. So, of course, over here is going to be the most complex part, but try to remove everything that adds complexity to your service. And once you do this, you'll see how it starts getting more and more perfect. The last 5th principle of good services is going to be require the minimum steps to complete. And for example, here, I always think of when you want to open a bank account. You don't want to be filling out a lot of information and a lot of forms and a lot of pages. All of these bank accounts that open in 2 minutes are the best service that you can give. But you have to think this into any type of service. You should require the minimum possible steps in order to complete your service, because this number of steps or the speed at which the user moves are going to be crucial, especially in today's world, because services are often evolving with extra and extra and extra layers on unnecessary steps due to unconscious design. So if something can be automated with the user's knowledge and it is beneficial, you should do it like that. Because even the empty space between steps should be designed only to provide transparency and control, giving the user some moments for decision, but you should never add an extra layer that's not needed. After you have all of these 5 steps for good services, and let's say that ideally you already know what to do with your service, why should you do it? Why should you go into all of this trouble of implementing some improvements into your service? Well, customer satisfaction is the result of comparing all your expectations with the actual experience that you received. And this matching expectations is going to lead to satisfaction in exceeding them, into delight, or if you're falling short, this is going to lead into dissatisfaction. And basically, this is going to be the only recipe for having users come back or having new users. So if you're having any trouble with churn or with acquiring new users, you should always try looking first at the service that you're providing, at the onboarding that you're providing, and all of the steps, the complexity, the seamless journey that you're giving them, because most of the times here is where they're dropping off. It's not in the actual delivery, because all of the steps are going to be accompanying what you have to do as a company. This is also related to a model that I learned in one of my classes that is from Noriaki Kano. And he's going to differentiate between three factors, which are called basic, performance, and excitement. So basic factors is what he calls a must-be quality. These ones will never increase satisfaction when they are present, but they are going to cause great dissatisfaction when they're absent. So let's think of hygiene factors. Of course, if you see a restaurant that has high hygiene, you won't be excited or delighted. That's the minimum thing that you're expecting from this restaurant. So all of these basic factors are how things should be. And you should ensure that you are at least covering these ones, because they won't make an impact for good things, but for bad things if you don't have them. The second type of factors are going to be performance factors. And these ones can lead to both satisfaction when they are done well, or dissatisfaction when they're missing. So let's continue with a restaurant example. This could be the food. So this is a one-dimensional quality. If the food is good, I'll be satisfied. If the food is not good, I'll be dissatisfied. This one's going to be a little bit simpler to understand, and these performance factors are the ones where most people are focusing on. But there's a third set of factors that are called excitement factors, and these are where there is an attractive quality. And all of these excitement factors will only create satisfaction when they are present, and they don't cause dissatisfaction when they are missing. So if we can summarize them, they are like the cherry on top. If you don't have them, you wouldn't be dissatisfied. But when you have them, this is the wow factor. And this is where only mature companies that are providing services should aim to be. They should be looking for this excitement factors that will be, for example, in a restaurant, providing outstanding service. Maybe personalized food or tailored recommendations if they already know you, stuff like that. So you wouldn't be expecting that. It's not a basic factor. It's not a performance factor because you're usually feeling happy or dissatisfied when you find good or bad food. But these wow factors are going to be what takes the extra step. And tricky thing here though is that you should only focus on these wow factors once you have the fundamentals done. So for getting there, ideally, I hope that you one day get there, you have to first cover the two other factors that are going to be the basic factors and the performance factors. And all of this can be done by consciously designing these services and focusing on the principles, because all of this will lead to much better experiences for users, customers, employees, basically everyone. And by establishing a baseline for good services, organizations are going to be able to be more efficient, also spend resources on unique aspects of their service rather than reinventing the wheel on basic functionalities. And all of this experience is going to turn into a competitive advantage for your company. Because when service design makes sense on the spreadsheet, as well as the sketchbook, it becomes truly sustainable for any company. In the upcoming episodes, I'll try diving deeper into different steps that we will take in service design, but I hope this episode was useful. Share it with a friend if you think he or she can also learn and benefit from this knowledge from my MBA classes, and I'll see you next week so we can keep learning more about service design.